Dear friends, as the organizer and founder of Brandin Club, I'm happy to welcome you to our webinar. As you know, getting funding, it's important for new entrepreneurs, research, startups, and also big companies. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator and COO of our company, Ron Shalev. Ron, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. How are y'all doing?
Okay.
Okay. So very simply, our company provides comprehensive solutions and services for young entrepreneurs and startups, and that includes also attracting funds. As my grandfather used to say, you can't know everything, but you should know how to ask. So, more precisely, who to ask. So today we're asking Daniela. She's an expert in EU funding and everything that you need, and she knows everything that you need to do in order to secure them. She knows the processes in and out. During the presentation, please feel free to write your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer them in the second part of the webinar, which will be focused on answering your questions. Also, you'll be able to watch the webinar later on YouTube via the link that will be provided. Without further notice, Daniela, the floor is yours, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. So good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining, and thanks for the Brandin Club team for inviting me. Let me briefly introduce myself and share a bit about my background and expertise. I am basically an expert in business positioning, and I also work in European funding. And currently, I'm based in Cyprus. In like 20 years, I think I've turned like 400 or 500 projects in actionable plans, which is very important. And I work with private, public sector, so also in private public consortia, and not only EU funding programs. I both do grant office activities, but I also work in DECO strategy, which is an EU funding project, dissemination, exploitation, and communication, which is something very specific into the work packages of EU funded projects. And then my work span on various sectors. So I collaborate with companies, ecosystem, university on multidisciplinary projects. So what's the opportunity today? Well, Europe is investing billions of euros in innovation, technology, in growth, in startup. Probably you already know it. But from the point of view of a company, there's funds are not just about financing ideas with a good impact, which is the main goal of EU, of course. For you, EU funds are fresh money for your ideas to innovate and for your resilience as well. But for a company, everything is about positioning, visibility, like long-term market influence. So what a company does when a grant is to gain credibility, to create a new connection. And you know, the connection is one of the capital of it's a monetizable capital of your company. And so what you do accessing the grant is to access the real European innovation ecosystem. So, but how much money we are talking about? Well, multi-annual financial framework, the 21-27 allocates around 1,800 billions that if we sum with the next generation EU recovery instrument, which is a temporary instrument, we are around 1,800 billion, so a lot of money. And you have to know that calls comes out continuously. So probably if you did a grant screening yesterday, next week it might be not updated. And why this? Because other like 20 calls have been announced and it will open in 1 month. So we have like 35 programs and around today, I checked today and I found like 400 open and forthcoming calls. So where each single calls can assign a precise number of grants that can be 3 grants, 10 grants, 20 grants or more. It depends. Here the rule is that everything depends on the single call. So it's very important to read the descriptions. But the reality is that every missed opportunity from my side means that another company, another organization, a consortium is securing that fund. So it's taking the opportunity to shape the market in the next like 3, 4, 5 years. And so it's positioning itself instead of you. So if you don't act, basically others will. And it's the case to say that every left is lost there. What kind of clients I have? Well, for instance, a consortium that made of 20 partners that in 2020 applied for an Horizon call, so on a call of research on a smart city and received 12 million grants. And now is finishing the project, is looking for a new one. Or the clean energy multi-utilities that is already managing more than one Horizon project. And they come to my office to understand how to position the new proposal because they are running for a grant of 30 million. Or the other one in healthcare that last year won like a grant of 7 million, and they're duplicating because it's the second time for them. So it's the grant that they take to continue a project that they already set like 6 years ago. So this is the case. Or I have companies applying for the EU funding for the first time. I have the startups. I have also the university searching for consortium partners. And I also have associations that want to be independent in grant screening and in writing proposal. And so they want just to do some training to learn the process. And so there is really a variety of possible situation. And the other important things to say is what's the main path? How is made the main path for everybody? So we all start from a grant screening unless you have someone, for instance, a partner that already has a call who want to run for and ask you to take part into the consortium. This is to be lucky, but in most of the case, you start with the grant screening to identify the most suitable opportunities. So here the dev is the case to say that the dev is in details. So there are many sources, and you need to understand how to read documentation and how to link it to other sources. So it might be tricky. Then the second step is consortium creations that mean to bring together the right partners without wasting time, and also trying to increase chance of approval. The third step can be developing and aligning the work packages because at a certain point you will have like a value proposition and you have to organize the idea into actions. And so you need to create work packages structure without doing, the extra mile, without writing too much. So very talk to talk, walk to walk, and there are specific rules to do this. And then there's the real proposal preparations and the application submission phase. And about that, proposals are written in a very, very specific language. Plus, you cannot apply, at the 11th hour. So you have all the time to prepare, but you really need to master the process. And then, of course,
just 1 minute, please, Daniela, just to be sure. Do you have some presentation if I understand you
Yes,
correctly.
I'm starting in a few minutes with the presentation. I have a presentation
Perfect.
with the bus
Thank
in
you.
it. Okay. And then I was saying that once funded, I support the execution phase of the project. And today, as I mentioned, I decided to run like a busting the myth session because, in my experience, what still holds many organizations back from accessing you found is the perception of extreme complexity, which is in some sense which is true, but there is something that we can overcome. So not be scared because it's not completely unmanageable. It's something that you can do if you are supported. And above all, before to start with that myth, I really would like to tell you that European funds are the perfect type of funding that you can use if you have like a nut crack. So what's yours? You want to build a technology, you want to create a solution that could be revolutionary in your country or that can remove like structural market barriers in your geographic areas. This is the kind of funds are for you. Very often my clients ask me to access to the fund and but to work on a side project, but you can use them for your main project, for your main business. And you can find calls in quite old fields. So digital, you are from AI, you are from sustainability, you are from cybersecurity, aerospace, urban development, social inclusion. You can find quite everything. They are cyclic, so you can find in many different season of the year. And but let's start with the first myth. So I will share my presentation. Well, so the first myth is that Europe does not provide funds to individual citizens. Well, this is true. This is true that the most EU funds target businesses and research institution and the public bodies, but the business, the companies are really in the center. Then there are opportunities for individual as well, so you can find program for like training program, scholarship, but it's not the center, the real center for us. Among the companies, who is eligible? So regarding Israeli companies, they can benefit from EU funds through various agreements and collaborative programs established between the EU and Israel. And Israel has been associated with the EU's framework program to research innovations. And then we have to say that Israelis companies can access EU funds, and as an associated country, Israeli companies, startups, university, and research centers can also participate on like equal terms with European entities. So this is very, very important, relevant, because it means, for instance, that on specific program, they also can coordinate and lead projects under Horizon Europe. They can receive EU fundings without the obligation to repay the money. In some EU programs, like for instance, I know that there is like the RDF programs, there are some restrictions to EU member states, so Israeli companies cannot lead the project in such program, but they can still be partners in the initiative. So long story short, it depends on the single call. And what are the main programming opportunity for your company? So the Horizon Europe, so innovation, AI, everything which is deep tech, cybersecurity, health, sustainability. Then there is the AIC accelerator. so tech startups with high market potential. Then the Eurostars and the Digital Europe, and then there are Erasmus Plus, Life, so the other program. As I mentioned, we have more than 30 programs. In various funding program, we have to say that eligibility criteria meet the need of supporting also female entrepreneurship and also minority-led business. So it's something that we have to mention. It's not like this in every program. But in someone we can find this special eligible criteria. So like in European, in the EIC, so European Innovation Council call, or something in Social Fund Plus, we can find this kind of call. Other point which is very important, who takes the initiative? So for instance, now you're a company, but what can be your role in the project? So you can be a leading partner. You can be a partner leading a work package in the program, or you can be a technical partner or provider of service. So what's the difference? In the first two cases, you are into the consortium, you are in since the very beginning. In the other two cases, you can jump on board after. So the consortium can select you to cover one of the work package or one activity into a specific work package. So you have the opportunity to jump into the funds in this kind of program. You funded not only as a leading partner, so not only taking the initiative, but also after. So this is very important to be in to have the right also relations and network in this case, because it is possible to be selected from someone that is already managing a project that already received a grant, and so they need to do something, and you can have the expertise to do this. So this second slide. Let me turn it. Just a time to turn my presentation. I lost it. Just a second. Sorry, just a second. I cannot find my presentation. I have to turn it. Okay. So is your business for profit? So that means that if my business is for profit, that means that there are not funding for you. There's no calls for me. Probably it's better to say that if your idea is only for profit, probably it will be difficult to find a code that match for you, because the main purpose of European funds is to meet the needs of citizens, and through the cooperation and through the work innovation that companies and consortium can bring. But we can say that is a common misconception. While many EU programs support non-profit, several funding mechanisms, like a specific target for profit activities. For instance, the EIC is like this. And in general, the research is at the center of this kind of funds. So that's not true. Other myth, if you don't have a track record of grant agreements, stay away. And that's not true, because newcomers are more than welcome in this case, especially in the last few years. And the EU then try to encourage like fresh participants that can bring innovation, and first-time applicants after bringing innovative idea and disrupting solution can bring also new things into the process. For instance, can create new process, can be inspiring for others, and so they are very welcome. And there are even EU funds available for organizations that have not yet been legally established. So, for instance, there are calls where the requirement is to formally register as a company within like 16 or 90 days from the grant agreement. And the grant agreement is that basically the act that formalized the founding agreements, and so how the consortium has to use the fund. So how sets the rules. Other myth: companies usually access only horizons. That's not true, because there are a lot of fund for specifically for company. But Horizon Europe is a major program. We have to say it, because even if it's not the only one, is the more focused on the research and innovations. And but there are many other funding programs. For instance, the SMEs can also explore to COSME for business, competitiveness, and the single market one. And it's also very important to understand as a company when you can access this kind of program, especially if you are trying to access Horizon. So if you are in research. About that, I have to say that the calls very often specify the technology. They call it TRL, which stands for technology readiness level. So, for instance, according to the European Commission, they define 9 levels. And so, for instance, they can ask you you are at the level 5, you have technology validated on an relevant industrial environment, and they can ask you through the call to pass to the step to step to the TRL 7. So to use the grant to create a prototype or a demonstration in an operational environment. So very often you can find this kind of suggestion into the call. So it's important to know that you can step into a call if you are TRL 1, so you are observing some fundamental principle, but also if you are near to a real system proven and operational environment, for instance, technology. Other myth: I want to finance and monetize my idea. So it's not about your idea, because when you start working, especially if it's not a solo run and you run with other into a consortium, it's very important to say that you will share the project with the other. And so the consortium will not work on your project alone, but during the consortium building phase and starting from the very beginning, you will see changing something in the project if you are the proponent of the project. So a broader project will be created, and this broader project must align with all the requirements of the call. And then another thing to say is that you need to consider that you finance project that generate some public value. So this is still important. And very often in consulting, clients come with a project that is like too specific, or that they are already deeply attached to. And without realizing that this approach works for some call, but not for all the calls. So if you need to work with a consortium, you must approach the first consortium meeting with an open mindset, ready to negotiate, even because the consortium can bring value to your idea too. 6 myth: too little time to submit a complex project. That is true. Sometimes you have the perception to have too little time, but even if deadline can be challenging, if you have a proper planning phase and the right knowledges of how the calls work, because they are cyclic, so that can make a huge difference. So, for instance, call for proposal are often announced months in advance, not many months, but 2 or 3 months in advance. You can notice about them, and so you have the time to prepare for it. And then another very important thing is that a lot of time goes when you create a consortium, because if you're not experienced, it's very easy to waste your time. So the right experience can help you reduce time constraints. Other myths, you will see the money. If you receive a grant, you will see the money after months. Okay, probably someone among you has already some experience in that. So if you receive a grant, you will see the money after a month, can be true or not. And let's talk about money because I think it's necessary to shape the correct expectation. Well, not necessary. Most EU grants provide an upfront pre-financing installment. They call it floating, so that that ensure that projects can start without financial strain, which is very important. And then the payment are scheduled, and very often they go with the achievement of the milestone. And in any case, they ensure continuous funding flow. And my clients very often have received a floating coverage in the first 6 months of the project, and sometimes also in the first month of the project. So it's not a rule, but it's something that you can notice about into the documents of the course, so you know since the very beginning. Then we have to say it also depends on the kind of the grant. So for instance, there are different kind of grants, reimbursement of eligible costs, or you can have the lump sum funding, or the unit-based cost. The two main are the lump sum funding, that simplify a lot the financial management, because they give you a fixed amount to complete the project, and you don't have to justify every single expenses. But you just need to somehow demonstrate that you achieve the agreed results. In Horizon, it's not like this, and it's also the reason why to write a proposal for the Horizon is more complicated, because when you have the reimbursement of eligible costs, especially if you have a funding rate, important funding rate like 10%, 10%, then you have to justify your expenses and be very precise. And so you have to sleep in many categories like personnel, travel, equipment, if you have subcontracting and other direct costs. And then you have usually 25%, if I'm not wrong, of flat rate for indirect costs. So it's a bit different because you can do it with different grade of experiences. And since we call about the percentage of funding, let's also talk about, okay, what are the program that guarantee up to 10% fundings? Well, you can find it in Horizon Europe, some measure for research innovation action, the RIA. Sometimes they guarantee the 10% funding. EU for Health sometimes has this kind of funding, and the Erasmus Plus, the everything which is around the Zulu migration integration, so the AMI funds and the European Social Funds Plus, And so there are programs that give you the 10% fund, but the concept of the 10% funds is related to the risk of market failure. What does it mean? It means that if an organization or business operating in a sector affected by the market failure, so that for instance, market failure occurs when the market does not provide enough like incentives to invest in an area of public interest, such an high-risk innovation in aerospace, for instance. So EU funds can give you like the 10% funding. Why? Because in such cases, the European Commission may justify for funding to reduce the risk and encourage investment in strategic sectors. So this is the reason why. Next slide, next myth. I will never be able to pay back that much money. And we mentioned before, you don't have to pay it back. Then public funding is incompatible with private funding sources. No, because this is in my opinion, this is the perfect mix when a company can put together private and public funding. Then we have the 11th. Writing a proposal is a long and difficult job. Long it depends, because very often you are required to, to write 43 pages, and other times you are required to write 200 pages. It depends on the program. It depends on the funding model. If you are supposed to explain everything on how you will use the money, because you will define how you will use the money in the proposal. So it depends. It's clear that if you have an expert that can streamline on the process, it's more easy for you. I think that it's crazy if you have to take an horizon call and the deadline is into 2 months. It may be crazy to run for it, but if you have for 6 months would be optimal. But if you have for 5 months and you already have the idea on how to create a consortium, or you have already partnered, or you are not asked to create a consortium of 20 partners, maybe you can do it. Maybe you can manage it. Then once I receive the grant, I will think about how to use the funds. That's not true, because how to use the funds as how you will communicate the project and how you will exploit the project after the hands of the funds is something that you now have to put into the proposal. So it's, it's not something that you can decide after. And then where it's not clear how the project are evaluated. Yes, this is a complaint that very often I receive from my clients, but on that I have to see that's not true, because evaluation criteria are not unclear. So the EU follows like a structured, transparent evaluation process, and you can notice about that even on the website. They explain it very clearly. In the documentation of the course, you can find all the criteria, and there are important criteria like excellence, impact, how you will implement the project. So another thing to say is when I can consider myself a winner of the grant, not in the moment that they tell you that you pass the selection, but at the moment in which you are invited to Brussels for the grant negotiation phase. Because yes, You can have the right number of points to access the grant, but then there is a phase of negotiation. So you go in Brussels to sign the grant agreement, and when you have the grant agreement signed, officially you can confirm the funding. So after that, you would do a consortium agreement among the members of the consortium. This is very important because during this phase of negotiations, your institution can ask you to change some little details into your project. And so how effectively the project is set, you cannot, after the signature of the grant agreement. We are quite at the end. European audits are difficult to pass. Yes. European audit can scare you a lot, but audit follows the clear guidelines, even in this case, and focus on compliance. So they will test you on financial capacity and operational capacity, and also co-financing ability if is required co-financing into the project. Financing means that if the grant doesn't cover the 100% of the cost and cover the 70% of the cost, they can ask you in some out cover. They ask the consortium to cover the 10% left, and there are specific way to do that. That's not every time you have to do in cash. For instance, you can propose like in-kind investment, so you can make it appear the investment that you do in the project with your personnel, with your infrastructure, with something that you bring into the project. Or there are, for instance, other national or regional grants that can complement the EU grants, or you can explain how revenues from the project they can cover this part of co-financing, and there are different way to cover it if it is required. So you really don't have to be scared. Another thing that is important to say is maybe what happens if your proposal is rejected, because it can happen. Probably if you already did it, you know that you can be rejected, and it depends on many variables. Not every time you are rejected because your proposal is not consistent or well-sounded. Many times it's rejected because there are a lot of applicants for the same proposal. But every time that your proposal is rejected, you receive like an evaluation summary, a report from the evaluators, so you can understand where are like the strengths and the weakness of your proposal based on the evaluation criteria that you noticed before. So you can understand how to reposition it. And reposition it is, it doesn't mean that you can do like copy paste for another call. There's a specific way to do it. Basically, because every time that you run for a call, you have to meet perfectly the requirement of the specific call. So if you find two calls that really looks like a lot, probably the second one is evolved in some way. So it's very important to read everything until the end. And so it's quite all, and I'm open to questions if you have it.
Thank you, Daniela. Probably you can tell us how our participant could be in touch with you.
Yes, through your network, for sure. I can leave you my contact, but I propose you, if you want, to set some specific meeting, like one-to-one meeting in the next few days. So if you have specific questions on your like companies, your ideas, how to position it, or something that you already, some step that you already did, for instance, because you already tried to apply and you receive a bad a bad answer from the EU, we can manage it, and it's very common, and so we can set it.
Okay. Daniela, thank you so much. I think it
Thank
was
you.
perfect, and actually everything it's clear. Thank you for our participant. It was very useful, I think, for us, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was really good webinar. Thank you, Irma, Ron, to organize that, and Daniela to explain. Everything was very clear, and you cover pretty much all the questions that we usually have. But I have one question, if I, don't mind
Please.
to ask
Yeah,
that.
sure.
And based on your experience, Daniela, how important it is to have a good lobbying and networking in Brussels in order to speed up some sort of project?
So I always tell to the company I work with that lobbying is sustainable, is not a sustainable way. Why? Because lobbying is sustainable if you can maintain it for a long time, and it happens if you're a big company, for instance. The idea is not to have lobbying, is not to it's to represent your interest, and is to have a good network, a network that works on the topics, on the
Okay.
research, on the argument. So this is very important in project. And I also have to say that, for instance, if you receive a grant, very often you have sister projects you have to work with, and where it's mandatory to work with. And so it's something that help you, especially if it is your first experience, because you really understand also a big difference between how you are used to communicate and disseminate the results, but also the kickoff phase of a project in your
Right.
usual way if you are a company in the innovation landscape, but you are only on the private market, and how is different to do it in European funds, basically because European institution needs you to do communication dissemination instead of them, because they cannot do directly
Sure.
that.
Sure.
The projects are
Absolutely.
like
Possible. Yeah.
a lot. And
Yeah.
so there are mandatory steps, and this is a part of the DECO strategy, dissemination communication strategy, and this is something that you can put into your proposal since the very beginning.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, it was super clear. And okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, please? No. Okay. Thank you for all. And we are open for communication. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you for
Thank you too for hosting me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Daniela. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.